Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Radio Islam International. We are coming to you from the precincts of City Hall in Cape Town. Radio Islam is doing live coverage of tonight's proceedings. And as we gear up for the President's address this evening, we will be also bringing you expert analysis from different key role players in the industry. For now, we have Maulana Suleiman Rawat, our programs manager at Radio Islam, as well as our Sabah al-Muslim presenter on Radio Islam for the last 2 decades, just to unpack some of the issues for us. Maulana, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, ma Habib. First time we're doing reporting from Parliament in the rain.
Yes, and an icy cold start indeed.
Yeah, winter in Cape Town is something very different for those who live in Johannesburg and Durban and the other regions of South Africa. You get rain and then you get that chill and that kind of a bite in the wind.
Malala, the President has called for a joint sit-in of the National Assembly. We have the National Assembly as well as the NCOP, the National Council of Provinces. We also have the three arms of the state. We have the executive, the judiciary, as well as the legislature. And how significant is tonight's address, given the fact that it is Nelson Mandela month, it is the 18th of July, which is also the birthday of Nelson Mandela. How historic and significant is tonight's address for Cyril Ramaphosa and the nation?
Well, I think, they chose the 18th of July because it kind of worked for them in terms of the logistics as it flowed after the elections. But at the same time, they could coincide Mandela Day with the opening of Parliament. But the greater focus is on what the President's agenda is for the next 5 years. The tone, very important, is going to be the tone because the dynamics have changed now. The GNU, Ethel Trollop, when speaking to us earlier on, said the ANC has lost its arrogance and it's lost its swagger and it's speaking with much more humility. And I think that is true. They have to. And it's good that they've acknowledged in such a humble way that they have lost power as a liberation movement. And they did not try and deny what the voters had expressed at the polls. So all critics, and I think not only critics, but South African citizens will want to hear from the President, okay, now the dust has settled, you've got your cabinet, you've got your coalition, what's the plan, what are you prioritizing on the agenda for the next 5 years?
Yes, indeed. And looking at the speeches under the ANC over the last 3 decades, many would say that it has lost its value and significance and the meaning. The public don't really tune in to listen and follow what is happening. How can the President, gain the confidence of the broader public when he speaks to the nation tonight?
It ain't going to happen in one speech. That's the brutal reality. A speech may be a good start, right? But the only way you're going to gain confidence of the public or regain confidence in the public and inspire confidence in that big percentage of people who are eligible to vote and haven't voted, that big percentage of people who are eligible to register to vote and haven't bothered to register, is via action. You've got to deliver the goods. That's what it is now. 30 years into democracy, speeches ain't going to cut it. It's not going to be a kind of Mbeki, I'm an African thing and everyone's wow and inspired and all of that. They want to see action in terms of the issues that they have to contend with on a daily basis. And if Ramaphosa can deliver that in the next 5 years, then I think you'll see that confidence once again reach higher levels in the electorate.
And they're referring to tonight's address as the opening of the Parliament address and no longer the State of the Nation address as it was amended last year. They're making a significant difference there. They're saying that this is now outlining the plan for the next 5 years in terms of the government. And SONA is more to do with past year and outlining the priorities for the coming year. This will be the first sitting for the President under the new government. Do you think that he'll be able to bring in new elements to his speech, given the fact that not much can be changed?
I don't think so. There may be one or two pleasant surprises here and there. I don't think it's going to be a speech that is going to wow people. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think so. What we have to now look at is the dynamics are changing, right? You've got the GNU. Those who are positive about the GNU will say that, many of the problems that we have in the country is because of the arrogance of power. One party having all the key positions. That has now changed. Whilst that has changed, Zizi Kodwa has come back to Parliament, right, even after being charged. Whilst that has changed, Gwede Mantashe is still sitting in cabinet, even though he's implicated in the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. Zweli Mkhize is back in Parliament. John Hlophe, who was impeached, now is sitting on the same table that was used to impeach him. This is how politics works. I mean, if you take the values out of it, you would say it makes it very interesting. that he is now the official leader of the opposition. With the DA being in government, the MK is the next biggest party. They had to amend the rules. The MK is now the official opposition, and he's the leader of the MK in parliament. Jacob Zuma, a former president of the ANC, a former president of the Republic, is now pulling the strings of the official opposition party in parliament. So these are the dynamics. Not all of it is positive. There is optimism that there could be some degree of balance, that we may see some improvement in governance, that we may see ministers who are not loyal to the ruling party, that head key portfolios and they would do what needs to be done rather than just towing the party line and covering for the party. But at the same time, we can't be blind to these other dynamics. The ANC as a bloc now with the GNU is very, very strong, over 2/3. What's going to be the behavior of the MK and the EFF and their strategy in the coming years is, I think, pivotal for us to watch. Also, will this GNU hold? I think a key factor is what will happen within the ANC in terms of the succession battle for for who's going to come after Ramaphosa, because now local government elections is the next stop. After that is the ANC's own elective conference before you have the next national elections. Whilst he can still stand as a third term, or for a third term as party leader, he's not likely to do so. Even Mbeki could not get it right. So who's going to succeed him? And as a Muslim community, I think this is where we need to also ask ourselves the question that we've seen an entire generation of Muslim leaders at the political level leave. They haven't been replaced quantitatively, let alone qualitatively. So there was perhaps a time when we had more than a handful of members in cabinet who were Muslim. Now we just got a handful of Muslims as MPs out of 400. And if my memory serves me correctly, just one deputy minister in cabinet. So this is also a point of reflection for us. What's our 5-year plan? What's our 10-year plan? What's our 50-year plan? We saw what happened in the UK when the Muslim community mobilized. They galvanized, they strategized, they got behind one candidate in an area and managed to get 5 or 6 of them into parliament. And where they failed, the margins were narrowed. So even the candidate that prevailed know now that the Muslim vote counts for something, even though they don't have such big numbers. So that's also a question for us to ask, that where's our civil society strategy, our political strategy, local government, provincial government, and national government going forward now that the dynamics have changed so significantly?
Well, let's talk about the significance of Parliament and its role in a robust democracy like South Africa. We know that by constitution, the Parliament is supposed to play an oversight and also hold the executive accountable. But what complicates matter now is that the cabinet is no longer no longer the formation of one party. You've got different political parties coming together to form a GNU. The question now is that how do you hold the executive accountable when the person could be from your own party? Could we see accountability taking place?
Well, it's going to be a challenge, but there's also going to be an advantage, right? So it is hoped that some of the ministers who are not part of the ANC would be more transparent. So we're kind of seeing some of it already, because they're coming in and saying, hey, this is what we found. So much of money missing, this is wrong. Whereas an ANC minister succeeding an ANC minister will not expose him, because he'll get into trouble in the party. The DA ministers coming in, for example, or IFP don't have that problem at cabinet level. At parliament level, I think those parties that are part of the GNU, they can still play a role in the committees and where they are chair of committees, because it's somewhat separate. Although you've got this national coalition going and you've got to keep within that spirit of it. But the other parties will have to step up now. The EFF, the MK, they have an opportunity to be very mature and sober in their approach. Parties like Action SA, or even those who may be part of the GNU but don't really feature all that prominently, like Rise Mzansi or Bosa. They've got key portfolios like Scopa, etc. I think there is where they need to really upscale in terms of transparency and holding the executive accountable.
The GNU represents 70% of the assembly. Then you have the Progressive Caucus on the other side, the alliance partners. What do you think will be their strategy going forward to remain relevant? And given that we also know that there will be a press briefing a little later on, how will they remain relevant in the Greater Assembly, Manala?
That's a key question, and it's difficult to predict, right? So if you look at the EFF, they seem somewhat lost in terms of strategy. They haven't grown as a party at the polls. They've got this VBS scandal that's come back to bite them in a big way. The Malema is in and out of court. They're struggling now with a sense of relevance. They're no longer able to shock the electorate and grab headlines in that particular way. They're not part of the GNU. At the same time, they're not the biggest party of those out of the GNU. They have been eclipsed by the MK. So what will their strategy be? I think a smart one would be to consolidate and become more statesmanlike. See, the thing with the MK is if they've exploded on the scene, but they're a personality-based party, the EFF has got an advantage over them in that they've got 10 years of experience in being able to set up structures of the party. We're seeing what's happening with the MK, changing positions and leaders every other day. And it seems quite chaotic. Even their approach towards the negotiations, etc., didn't seem all that structured. If the MK can get their house in order, it would be very interesting, to see the kind of role that someone like John Globe would play, because this is not a man who's not smart or who's not intelligent. He sat on the bench as the judge president for so many years. At the same time, he's so implicated. So what exactly their strategy would be is difficult to predict at this stage, especially since it's a personality-based party and heavily driven by what Zuma feels or thinks at the time. And there's a sideshow going on there in terms of his own disciplinary hearing when it comes to the ANC. The EFF, on the other hand, I think the more prudent thing for them to do is to consolidate, work with the MK, but not get too directly involved with the MK, and use this as an opportunity to show themselves as an alternative to all in the GNU now, to try and clean up their reputation and their image. Whether they'll be able to succeed or not remains to be seen. But for me, that seems like, the most strategic thing to do. But we wait for this press briefing. We'll get some interesting and, I think, important cues there.
You spoke about the VBS scandal and how it's coming to bite the EFF. On the counter argument for them would be then the Pala Pala. We saw the former president when he was interviewed at his homestead just after the elections. He made a side remark, that when a lot of money is found somewhere, it's downplayed as little money. And he tried to make an insinuation of what was happening with Ramaphosa and the Pala Pala scandal. What do you think will be the strategy of the EFF, and given the fact that probably MK will be supporting them, do you think that the Pala Pala issue will become a big thing?
Absolutely. I think they're going to try and bring it up over and over again. That's the stick with which they're going to try and hit him, right? Like they did with Nkandla and Zuma. He's going to get protection from the DA. And obviously from his party, the ANC. As John Steenhuisen has already made it clear, they can't be voting for the impeachment of a president that they've just joined, unless there's something more compelling and overwhelming that comes to the fore. So it should happen. In principle, I mean, all aspects of this Pala Pala scandal should be explored. The ANC and the DA will argue that if it's nothing new, then it's already been dealt with. If it's something new, then we'll look at it. But for sure, the EFF and MK are not going to leave this. Ramaphosa is the most secure man in the short term because the GNU now heavily depends on him. And therefore, he will get the support of the other parties within the GNU apart from his own party. And his faction, as things stand, is still the dominant faction within the ANC. The key thing is going forward in the medium to long term, when the succession battle starts to rage and the EFF and the MK start to stoke the fires within the ANC from outside, then to see from this new generation of ANC leaders now who's going to emerge. There's an interesting picture we saw in the museum inside City Hall of a young Ramaphosa and Rolf Meyer playing the part of, making sure the coalition talks remained on track. And now they are both elderly gentlemen. That generation is on its way out. We've seen many ministers go already. Entire generation, if not two, is now leaving the political scene. Is the next generation going to inspire greater confidence? Is it a greater caliber of cadre? I think that remains to be seen.
Finally, Molana, you mentioned earlier on that the provincial elections will be taking place, or the local elections, and then after the electoral conference. Do you think that the GNU will be impacted with the man changing and Ramaphosa not standing for the third term? Do you think it will impact on the GNU?
It most certainly could, because see, we've seen coalitions at local government elections, after local government elections in 2016 between the DA and EFF. It never lasted. So there's no guarantee that this GNU will last. But if we think that this elections was tight, I think the next local government election is going to be even tighter, and there's going to be more at stake. And there you would probably find people more interested because it's got local government connotations in terms of service delivery that impacts on them directly. So therefore, I think that the next 2 years and a bit is critical. And it's also, once again, an opportunity for us not just to wait to see what the politicians are going to do, but for us to mobilize on ground level and to start getting involved at civil society level and in the political discourse and strategically locate ourselves within the political landscape, because no one will do for you if you can't do for yourself, and you can't effect change if you don't have a seat at the table.
Finally, as an ordinary citizen, how does he take hope from all of this amidst all the doom and gloom, what message of hope can you share?
You can never give up. We've seen worse and we've come out of it. We've seen apartheid, right? And we've come out of it. And we can come out of this. It requires people to put their shoulders to the wheel. It requires hard work. It requires resilience and discipline. But this is a great country. And if we want to keep it great and make it even greater, then we've got to ensure that we do the right things now so that the next generation can benefit from the fruits of our labor like we are benefiting from the fruits of the labor of our predecessors.
Jazakallah khairan to Maulana Suleiman Rawat. Continue following Radio Islam throughout the day as we bring you rolling coverage from the precincts of City Hall in Cape Town. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.